Talk boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Very recently, Eddie Hearn was quoted as saying that he's definitely open to discussing a rematch between Alicia Baumgartner and Michaela Mayer. And, you know the old saying, takes two to tango.
Alicia's not about to do Michaela any favors. I mean, I think Eddie Hearn understands that.
And Eddie Hearn himself knows what Alicia Baumgartner's priorities are. Right now, the priority, which she's got in mind, is a Hyun-Mi Choi showdown, a Hyun-Mi Choi fight. It's my understanding
The undisputed super featherweight contest is supposed to be underway. The wheels, as they were. Those wheels are in motion.
Beyond that fight, Alicia Baumgartner herself took to her social media and stated quite plainly that she will move up to 135 pounds, 135 where Katie Taylor currently reigns as that division's undisputed champion. And if Katie Taylor still is undisputed champion by the time that Alicia gets there may be a fight between them.
This is a fight that is perfect to make. Katie Taylor is a high-level fighter. I'm a high-level fighter. I think us would bring such a beautiful boxing match that people would love to see. And I want to fight the best. I want to have a challenge. I love people who challenge me because that makes me a better fighter.
I'll say it again. Alicia's not doing anything to Michaela Mayer that Michaela Mayer wouldn't readily do to Alicia. Michaela would have emerged the victor. She would have looked into fighting Hyun-Mi Choi, and if she came up short of options, she'd move up and look to fight Katie Taylor.
But as it stands, Alicia won, and it's Alicia who's looking to fight Hyun-Mi Choi. It's Alicia who's looking towards the future to a Katie Taylor fight. And that fight, it's a palpable possibility. It's realistic.
You know, I've asked this question before. If Alicia were actually willing to give Michaela Mayer a second shot, second opportunity, would Michaela be willing to cross over to the DAZN side of things? Because I know you're not expecting Alicia to cross over to your side of things again.
You know, that's what gets lost in all the robbery talk. How the hell could Alicia, the underdog and the away fighter...
Wrap your mind around that. Alicia Baumgartner was the away fighter. If anybody was a house fighter in that situation, it was Michaela, not Alicia. But she got the decision, and it just is what it is.
Michaela Mayer is not the only big fight for me. There's Katie Taylor. There's Chantel Cameron. There's any fighter out there, Amanda Serrano. These fights, I make big fights, you know? We don't need a mayor for that. But I will say it will be another great show, and I really would end her career, I know that.
What did I tell you immediately after the fight? Alicia Baumgartner's got options. If she beats Hyun-Mi Choi the way I think she's going to beat Hyun-Mi Choi, Katie Taylor becomes a possibility, as does Amanda Serrano, the winner of Cameron versus McCaskill this weekend, and they're all right there, at least two of them.
What has my attention the most is a potential Katie Taylor fight, a potential move upstairs to 135 pounds, because now we know Amanda Serrano may not go straight into a Katie Taylor rematch at Croker Park. She may look to become...
The WBA very recently ordered reigning WBA featherweight champion Erica Cruz to take on Amanda Serrano. They're putting pressure on Erica to unify titles with the only other champion at the weight, if you can believe that. And that puts Erica in a rather compromising position, because now she doesn't have a choice. If she doesn't comply, they'll strip her of that title. They'll strip her of that belt. Amanda may look to capitalize on this opportunity before entering into a second fight with Katie. So who knows how long it might take to make a second fight.
A rematch. Baumgartner versus Taylor, that has my attention.
Whoever Katie Taylor faces at Croke Park at some point next year, whoever she faces, if she makes it through that fight and she remains the lightweight division's undisputed champion long enough that Alicia Baumgartner sees herself become an undisputed champion downstairs at 130 and subsequently moves up. Taylor versus Baumgartner, stylistically, is a fascinating fight.
Katie Taylor's come up against a lot of fighters with a lot of different base styles. Pressure fighters, swarmers, some boxer punches, but no real finesse fighters.
No pure boxers. Victoria Bustos, Rose Volante.
Those are boxer punches.
So is Natasha Jonas, Christina Lenarditu, Delphine Passoon, Jessica McCaskill. Those were pressure fighters, but no pure boxers. Haven't seen Katie Taylor in there with a pure boxer, quite honestly. There aren't that many at or around these weights, but Alicia Baumgartner, she has that in her toolbox. She can be that outside jabber, that stick and move fighter.
Katie's fought some really strong fighters with good engines.
But no pure boxers, no finesse fighting kind of fighters the same way that Alicia Baumgartner is a finesse fighting kind of fighter with a lot of athleticism, a lot of speed, and a lot of power. I think Alicia Baumgartner could prove to be an even stronger puncher at 135 pounds, given her physical dimensions, her build, her age, and the fact that she won't have to cut the extra 5 to make 130 anymore at 135.
Katie's fought the best fighters around, the best fighters at or around these weights, but I've never seen her against a pure boxer.
There really aren't that many of those to go around at or around these weights, and with Alicia Baumgartner so close to becoming her own division's undisputed champion, Katie Taylor campaigning just north of super featherweight where Alicia is, and Amanda Serrano being preoccupied with her own undisputed campaign, Baumgartner versus Taylor is a palpable possibility. So, I really like the idea of that fight, and, let's see what the future holds. Let's see if it doesn't happen. Men's super middleweight news, the proposed January bout between David Benavidez and former IBF champion Jose Usukateki has now been called off. The planned super middleweight bout between the former champions, David and Jose, a PBC on Showtime main event set to take place in January, has been scrapped. Multiple sources told ESPN the reason, sources said, is public backlash surrounding Usukateki's positive test for the performance-enhancing drug recombinant human EPO ahead of a planned November 2021 fight with Benavidez. The rescheduled fight between Benavidez and Usukateki wasn't formally announced, but ESPN reported last month that the sides were finalizing a deal for the bout. Benavidez is seeking a new opponent for a fight in the first quarter of 2023.
Well, that's the cover story anyway.
In light of all the backlash that Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn received for Conor's positive test and all the details surrounding the now defunct Chris Eubank Jr. fight, I think it was a little bit hard for Showtime executive Stefan Espinoza to sit on his high horse wagging his finger at Eddie while he was basically rescheduling a fight.
Rescheduling a fight that was initially called off due to one of the fighters testing positive for a banned substance.
You can't seriously sit on your high horse wagging your finger at Eddie with all of your moral authority.
You can't do that and reschedule this fight at the same time, because if you do, it's like nothing happened.
It makes you a hypocrite. A big fat fucking hypocrite is what it would make you, because that fight got called off for the same reason that Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. got called off. But unlike Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr., you reschedule this thing, and it's like Jose just got a slap on the wrist.
It's like nothing happened, because he'll end up getting the fight anyway.
He would have. He's not going to now. Showtime spokesperson Chris de Blasio told ESPN that the fight was never scheduled for Showtime. Samson Lukowicz, who promotes Benavidez, declined to comment. PBC didn't respond to a message-seeking comment as this went to publication. Sean Gibbons, who manages Usukateki, also didn't respond to a message-seeking comment. The news of the rescheduled Benavidez versus Usukateki fight broke 11 days after an October bout between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. was canceled following Ben's positive test for a performance-enhancing drug, leading to backlash against Usukateki and other parties involved with the planned fight. It's the hypocrisy of all of it.
Was that really the reason this fight has been called off?
Well, that's the cover story, but what the rumor mill is spinning is that this fight was called off in order to schedule a showdown between arch rivals David Benavidez and Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant, who was in action not that long ago, and he took out one of his other rivals, Anthony Durrell.
Took him out, knocked him out in sensational fashion.
Yeah, Benavidez versus Plant, at least on paper, it is a better fight, a better, more intriguing fight than Benavidez versus Usukateki, because Caleb Plant beat Jose Usukateki. That's the guy he won the red belt from.
The IBF title.
So for rescheduling a defunct Benavidez versus Usukateki fight, why not just schedule Benavidez versus Plant? Isn't it about time that you got that fight over the line?
These guys could have fought and should have fought a long time ago when they were both unbeaten champions reigning parallel to each other.
But Samson Lukowicz wanted to let the fight build. He wanted to marinate the fight, and he marinated it to the point to where David ended up losing his title on the scales ahead of the Romer Angulo title defense. And Caleb, we know what happened to Caleb. He got knocked out by Canelo Alvarez.
Now, Caleb Plant just posted on his social medias that you said that David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant needs to take more time. Why?
Look, this business is for two reasons. Make money and more money. Carlos Plant, or David Benavidez, you need another two good fights, and then you can go to be a pay-per-view.
The obvious answer fans would say, well, we want the best fight and the best. We're tired of paying for C versus D. We want A versus A.
Well, you have two A's, no
That's
doubt.
what I mean. Two A's and David Benavidez and Caleb
To
Plant.
see two A fighters, you need to pay. You cannot be for free. So I believe in two more fights, maybe next year, early next year or spring, it can be a unification.
Missed opportunity there for both fighters. Samson Lukowicz, he wanted to wait. He wanted to wait to make the unification match, and David Benavidez ended up losing his title on the scales in 2020. Caleb Plant, he ended up getting knocked out by Canelo Alvarez the following year in 2021.
The rest, as they say, is history. And what the rumor mill is spinning is that the real reason they canceled the Usukateki fight, it's not because of all this.
It's not due to backlash because the fight was never officially announced, do you understand? It's not actually due to public outrage, and I don't think the people at Showtime and Stefan Espinoza are all that altruistic.
They're standing on principle, or that they're all that selfless. I mean, give me a break.
There's a feeling that the real reason the Usukateki fight got scrapped is so that they can do a Caleb Plant fight and finally get that fight over the line. It is a better fight than a Usukateki fight, though I have to admit the fight isn't now what it could have been before. A battle of the unbeatens, the unbeaten champions.
And yeah, I do think it's a better fight than a Usukateki fight. I do think it's a better fight, but my personal annotations and anecdotes don't make it a box office fight, you understand?
Commercially, I don't know what this is going to do. At the box office, I don't know how many pay-per-views you can sell between these two guys. There's no alphabet titles on the line.
Nothing against Caleb, but we've already seen him get knocked out.
And listen, Deontay Wilder in his big comeback fight, he only sold 75,000 pay-per-view buys opposite the ring Robert Relenius, granted, but it's Deontay Wilder. This is a guy who's been involved with pay-per-views that sold upwards of 800,000 buys. 800,000. Down to 75,000.
If Wilder's big comeback fight didn't spark enough interest for him to crack 100,000 buys, what's this gonna do?
I've no doubts that the PBC will try and bill this as a box office fight, as a pay-per-view, and if they do, you really do have to wonder commercially what's it going to bring in, because it's getting to the point to where they're putting these fights behind a paywall almost out of necessity.
Remember, no money up front, no money guaranteed for Crawford versus Spence.
Confirmed on both sides. They didn't have any money to guarantee those guys.
They have money for these two? Is the PBC out of money?
And finally, just in keeping with the ongoing saga between Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr., their now defunct fight for this year, Oscar De La Hoya chimed in saying, "My respects to Terence Crawford," and exposing the Al Haymon circus. I've been dealing with this shit for years. I promoted all the PBC fighters, and it's all the same bullshit with them. They are not in charge. I'll be going live soon to elaborate and expose the truth. You know, I was waiting for Oscar to go live. He didn't.
You guys know the history of Oscar, Richard Schaefer, and Al Haymon, and how basically all the guys in the PBC, all those guys,
Very beginning. Luis Ortiz, Deontay Wilder, Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, Adrian Bronier, Sean Portier.
once upon a time, these were all Golden Boy Promotions fighters.
Richard Schaefer, Al Haymon conspired against Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy Promotions and funneled those fighters over to their PBC. And the rest, as they say, is history. Errol Spence Jr. responded to Oscar by saying, "And you didn't know shit about me or the other young guys coming up. You fucked up introducing us every time you was just the face."
It's not a secret that Al Haymon and Richard Schaefer funneled Golden Boy Promotions' a stable of fighters over to their PBC, and that's how they got started.
Errol Spence Jr. continued talking about exposing somebody. Rashidi left because he knows you don't know how to handle black fighters.
I've often heard that sentiment expressed about Golden Boy Promotions and Bob Arum and Top Rank.
I mean, that there are people out there that often say these things. I've heard these sentiments expressed before, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. Though if Al Haymon is so good with black fighters, then surely Errol Spence Jr. can explain.
It is true that Rashidi Ellis left Golden Boy Promotions very recently to pair up with the PBC, but in that same breath, young Floyd Schofield, an unbeaten up-and-comer, he rejected an offer from the PBC to join them for an offer from Golden Boy.
And he ended up joining them instead. We talked about it here on the channel and how it's not all sunshine and rainbows over there on PBC Island. It's not the land of milk and honey that it's made out to be. So the pendulum, as they say, it swings both ways.
Oscar continued by saying they have zero prospects because they do not know how to build.
When Al Haymon and other people stole all the fighters I built, what did I do? I started from scratch again, and I'm not stopping anytime soon.
It is true that the PBC don't have an assembly line of young, unbeaten up-and-comers and promising young fighters, blue-chip prospects. They ain't got a stable like a top-ranked stable.
I mean, Oscar's not wrong. The promising young fighters, those young unbeaten prospects, they don't seem to be signing to the PBC.
Irrespective of what you think of Oscar and what you think of Golden Boy Promotions as an outfit, he's really not wrong. I mean, look at Floyd Schofield.
We had preliminary conversations with the PBC, but one look at the contract and they decided to go in another direction.
Young Floyd Schofield and his father detailed why they made that decision. They said that the contract, by way of the PBC, gives PBC too much control.
Talked about that here on the channel. In a fit of rage, responding to an internet troll, Oscar continued, "Don't you fucking get it? Al Haymon is the cancer here. When I promoted Broner, Spence, Leo, Deontay, Thurman, etc., they were relevant, and I had a plan for them to become stars. Now they're just fighting once a year."
If that. Wake up, you idiots.
You really have to wonder what could have been had Richard Schaefer, Al Haymon, some others, not conspired against Oscar, not conspired against Golden Boy Promotions. If those fighters would have stayed Golden Boy Promotions fighters, would they have achieved the notoriety, developed the drawing power of a Canelo Alvarez, for example? Yet another fighter that Golden Boy Promotions developed.
Not a single one of those fighters that Al Haymon stole from Oscar de la Hoya, not one, went on to become the same box office draw as Canelo Alvarez. And for a very long time, Canelo Alvarez by himself kept Golden Boy Promotions afloat.
Had things not worked out the way that they worked out, could Oscar have done the same or something comparable for these other fighters like Adrian Broner, Keith Thurman, so on and so forth?
I've always said that Al Haymon gets a little bit too much credit for Floyd Mayweather's success. Floyd Mayweather, a generational talent. You often hear me say here on the channel that, yeah, he had something to do with it, but don't overstate his role. When you've got a generational talent...
I mean, by the time that Al Haymon came into the picture for Floyd, Floyd was already a fully developed fighter.
Al Haymon didn't groom him. He didn't develop him. He didn't build him.
What if he had? He would have been able to build himself another one, but he hasn't, has he? You have to wonder, what would that stable of fighters have developed into had Richard Schaefer and Al Haymon not conspired against Golden Boy?
You have to wonder.